Hello teacups, what's brewing? Welcome back to the channel. I'm sorry I haven't been around very much. You know me, when life gets busy, it gets quiet. But Chantal recently put up a video saying that she'd gotten her license as a Canadian in Kuwait. And she was speaking very carefully about that, so I thought we'd come on and just talk about it a little bit. Now, the last time I bought receipts for Foodie, she got very confused, so I'm going to try and keep this straightforward for everybody. Not that I think it's going to really make a difference, because the way she was talking about it tells me she knows. She knows that she's lying. She knows she always gets caught lying, and she's trying to pack herself and out into the video. But first, let's talk about licenses in Kuwait. Foodie has two options when it comes to her driving in Kuwait. She has the IDP, that's the International Driver's Permit that she would get issued by Canada to mean that her Canadian license could be recognised in Kuwait for a period of up to a year. Or, as a legal resident of Kuwait, you would have the choice of taking the Kuwaiti test and getting a license issued by that country. Now, prior to this, we had one other mention of Foodie driving, and that was in her video a year and a half ago now, almost, driving for the first time in a foreign country. And when she put out that video, we did say that it was pretty stupid because she obviously had not researched that you needed 2 years as a legal resident in order to have a license, which meant she put herself in a position where either she was driving illegally or she was proving she was a tourist. Now, it's also possible that both of those were true. She didn't have an IDP at that point, which I'm starting to think was more likely because she's made a video about getting it now, but we'll get into that. And therefore, she could have just had a Canadian license and been like, oh, I'm just going to drive. But it was impossible, even based on the lies she had told us, it was impossible for her to have her legal Kuwaiti driver's license at that point. And that video was published June 25th, 2023. Now, Foodie does kind of address this in her video that she's just put out about getting her license now. And this is what she has to say about that.
Yeah, I know I drove a while back one time, and I was under a different situation then, a different status and whatnot. So, but you know, when you change your status, it changes the type of license you need. So I actually have a proper license for my current status here.
Now, notice for a moment how carefully she is speaking. She has always said, despite the fact that she will literally crap herself on camera, that her marriage and her status in Kuwait is secret because from all the evidence we have seen, as I have said many times on this channel, I believe 1000% that she is just tourist visa hopping. So she's now saying, I am on the correct license for my status here, which does not say that she is married. She has sort of mumbled her way through an idea that Salah now sponsors her, but she hasn't wanted to get into detail with that because every time she does, she doesn't do her research well enough and she ends up tripping herself up over some of the technicalities. The implication in this video is heavily that, oh look, now I've got my Kuwaiti license. But as I say, she does not say that outright. So how dare you haters, you always twist my words. But just for funsies, let's look at the requirements for a license in Kuwait. Now, I am going to put a link down the bottom of the screen of wherever I got these so that you can find them if needed. Now, the thing with getting a driver's license as a resident, which is what Foodie has said she is, she claims she has a civil ID. The requirements are actually very similar to the work requirements because the assumption is if you work, you therefore have these. And if you've somehow gotten into the country illegally and don't have these, then you don't get the right to drive. Oh, is that making your life difficult? Then go away. So if Chantal were working, if she had a sponsor who could prove that and she had all of the paperwork, this is what she would have to do. She would have to print a driving license request, sign a medical fitness certificate after the request approval. You think she's passing a medical certificate, an eye test? Like, we saw her in the Kia barely able to turn her head. Do you think she could do that safely? Let's pretend she could for the moment for the sake of this, but I think she'd have some problems. After the medical examination and specific blood type, a driving license permit will be issued from the license department. An appointment for a driving test has to be made through the Ministry of Interior website. Ministry of Interior is where I got this from. After passing the practical and theoretical tests, the license issuing procedures will be continued through the license department. You then need a civil ID copy, I don't believe she has a civil ID, a passport copy, and some photos. In addition to that, she would need the original work permit and a copy with an authorised signature from her employer. There are a few other requirements here: security ID and criminal record check, employer original civil ID for maids, blah, blah, blah. But those are for different types of jobs or for people with non-specific nationality. Very importantly here, a legal residency for 2 years, or according to the resolution of blah, blah, blah. Where it says all driving licenses are issued for the non-Kuwaitis are valid according to the residency validity, it's because up until, I think there was a report in September of this year, up until then, it could only be a year long because contracts have to be renewed every year. Now it can be up to 3 years long, but you still need to be employed for that time. So according to Foodie herself in this video, prior to this, when she drove that one time, she was in a different status. This is the video she's talking about. This video, as I said, was from June 25th. So even if her legal residency had changed the following day, which, for the sake of the argument, let's say all of the things I know are not true and she's actually married and she's done all the things, that would mean she couldn't legally get a Kuwaiti license until the 26th of June next year. And remember, in order for her to apply for her own license, she would need to be employed, she would need to be making over a certain amount of money, all of the things you have to have in order to be a sponsor. Like, you have to make over a certain amount of money, you have to show employment, you have to show all the contracts, that kind of stuff you would need for this. Now, are there exemptions to that? Yes, absolutely there are. When you go on to the traffic department for the Ministry of the Interior, it has a whole list of people who can be excluded from those requirements and still receive a license. The only one that would apply to Foodie here would be what she claims to be a spousal visa. She might not be claiming that still. I think now it's just private. So the key thing here is they can exclude the residency salary and university degree, because she would also need a university degree, as a spouse of a Kuwaiti citizen, which Salah is not, but for the sake of the argument, who bore his children. The only reason they allow people on the spousal visa to get licenses is the argument that, oh, but what if I need to take my child to hospital or some emergency like that? So if you don't have kids and you're on a spousal visa, you cannot apply. And you still have to wait the 2 years. Foodie can't have kids, she hasn't had Salah's kids, and Salah is not a citizen anyway. So in terms of her getting a Kuwaiti license, it's an absolute no-go. She can't do it. Now, does that mean she's without a license at all? No. As I said, the second possibility is an international driver's permit. And that's the route I think she's gone here. However, by taking that route now, it just really tells me that she didn't have it before, because we're getting a whole video saying, look, now I'm licensed. Now, the thing with an IDP is you have to apply for it within the country that your license was issued. So Chantal would have to apply from within Canada. Now, she could have technically done that when she was back for a visit over Christmas, but then she had to leave quickly because Salah wanted to shit on people. And if we're going along with the idea that they are in fact legally married and she is in fact on a spousal visa, let's say from January of this year when this all went down, then the IDP only actually lasts for 1 year. After 1 year, you have to try and get a license, which is why there's usually a gap. Now, if I wanted to be very simple about it, I don't actually drive. I have a license, I hate driving, I never got an IDP, and I don't drive here. I get taxis because fuel is incredibly cheap, which Chantal has said lots of times, and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. Now, when I looked into this, the people who issue Canadian International Driving Permits are the CAA. I forget what that stands for. The Auto Association, I guess, or something along those lines. And they did have a section within their questions that talked about what if I'm not in Canada. So it says, can I apply for an IDP if I'm not currently in Canada? And the answer is yes, you can still apply for an IDP through the mail. Please include a note that states you are not in Canada and the address you would like the IDP to be mailed to. You can also have a loved one apply for you, see the question below. Now, Chantal could have done this, But I would guess she would go through a loved one, because if she does that and she says, no, mail it back to Kuwait, or to a Kuwaiti post office, which is what usually happens. We don't actually have like individual letterboxes here, so you either get it delivered by courier, or depending on how it's delivered, it gets dropped off at a local post office and you go and pick it up. But if Foodie is playing the game with the Canadian government that no, I'm in Canada, I'm registered at my mom's address, and she's got something connecting her to living in Kuwait, it's going to look pretty bad if that ever becomes an issue. Not that I'm saying she's necessarily smart enough to avoid that, but there we go. I would consider that if I were in her position, especially if my taxes and my health insurance were in the state hers are in. So her other option would be having a loved one apply on her behalf and then sending it to her, which is what I think has happened here. Another important point is this question here: can I apply to an agency within the foreign country I'm visiting for an IDP? No, only CIA can issue an IDP to individuals with Canadian driver's licenses. So she cannot go to an embassy. When she was in Thailand, she couldn't have rocked up somewhere and been like, I'm a Canadian, please give me the IDP. She couldn't go to a consulate or an embassy or anything official like that. She would have to get it in Canada, either herself or through somebody else. So that's what I think has happened here. I think she's just proving further that she's on a tourist visa, because she couldn't have this as a Kuwaiti, even if all her other lies were true. She couldn't have this as a Kuwaiti, because the one thing she's done here is pinpoint a timeline in her lies, which is saying, I was on a different status at this point for the video, which was June 25th. I don't think her status changed immediately after, but for the sake of argument, let's say it did. So at least until the middle of 2023, she was not living here legally with Salah. She was in the country legally because she was on a valid visa, but she could not, and I suspect is not, married. Now, moving on from all this, because I think the evidence does speak for itself if you bother to read it, Chantal, so don't get angry at me. This is freely available to people, just because you don't do your research. The question then becomes, why is Foodie doing this now? And I really do think something is going on between the two of them. She is less and less happy at home, and I think he is being less and less tolerant of the things that she wants. If you watched, I watched a bit, but if you watched the cone live, I know it had a different name, but when they're putting the cone on Julia and she's like, fine, yalla, come and help her, dada. She is so sharp with him, and she's rolling her eyes and then I guess pretending it's a bit of a joke. But nah, she looked pissed. I think she wants to have a bit more separation with him while claiming that they're madly in love. I think he probably wants a bit more separation from her, and I think he is becoming more stubborn about what he allows her to order in. Now, I know that sounds strange because she does order in a lot still, but recently they've been, I think, a little tighter on resources, and I think she wants the freedom to go out and get things without having to go through him, because I do what I want. And I think we're probably going to see arguments in the future about it, because she doesn't make good choices, and he has obviously got an eye to the things he wants in life, and her spending all the money on the stuff she wants doesn't help him. I think she's also, and I know she's been doing this for a while, but I think she is absolutely scraping the bottom of the barrel for content. If you see any of her eating videos now, she literally does not have a single point of conversation. It's just her eating. And you can make the argument that sometimes that's what those videos are, but historically on her channel, she's always had something else with them, and her views are not the better for it, and she knows it, because at the end of the day, whatever else is going on, she is aware of her bottom line, however much she likes to say, no, my husband provides for me. I have never had a problem with the fact that Chantal considers YouTube a job, because everyone needs money. Go get paid. But I don't think she's getting paid very much at the moment. I think that Christmas is coming up, and I think this video does two things. I think she knows it's something people are going to react to, so it gives her more scope to rage later. She doesn't just have, look how ridiculous the reactors are being looking up this stuff, and why are they like this? And it's not like it proves any of my past lies, which gives her not just this video, but videos to come, and gives her the chance to rile up a little bit of drama over Christmas. But it also independently gives her a chance to be elsewhere while she does that, and that might help her to up her views. I think she's more aware than he is that he is not popular on her channel. And there's a big defiant part of her that doesn't care and is going to show him precisely for that reason. But there's another slightly more practical part of her that sees her views dropping. And Salah is oddly sensitive about how popular he isn't. So I think having the conversation with him about Crazy Frog is not going to be productive, even if she were inclined to do it. So she wants a little bit more scope to say, look, I'm putting effort into my vlogs. I'm from another place, even if she's doing exactly the same thing. She gets to get away from him and she gets to eat and drink what she wants. Crucially, without justifying it to him. So she doesn't say, oh, look, it's a treat. Oh, look, yeah, we're eating a bit junky. She just gets to go and eat it and not have to have that conversation. Because when she orders it, it has to be ordered through Salah's account because she doesn't have an account. All right, friends. So there we go. That's all I have for you today. And we will see how quickly she rages about this. I'm guessing it's going to go for a while, because what other content has she got? And as always, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.